Hey guys, just want to talk to you about some work I've been doing on SmallHammer. 6mm fantasy combat. Units, base sizes are not all that important, but you know, uniformity looks great. The work I've been doing is on developing it into a solo or cooperative system where you take an army of troops and take it and fight against enemy troops controlled by the game. This means that several of you can pool a force together and then take on the game itself by working, you know, like a militarized version of Pandemic. It plays well into being used as a campaign system where you grow units, you buy units, and you develop units. Think Dark Omen, but on 6mm wargaming side. There's a couple of mechanics I want to talk about before I show how the game runs. The first is command points. Heroes generate command points. There are exceptions, there are magic items, there are special rules that give you more, but generally speaking, you get a command point per hero. Command points are used in your turn, so your active turn, to give units extra activations. Command points are used by the enemy to essentially do the same thing, but we'll come to that in a bit. Unit priority is the second thing I wanted to mention, because there is a catch-all system for it. When units activate or target or deploy, there is a check down roll call of unit types. So it starts with heroes, it's then monsters and war machines. They're the same class, essentially they work the same. A war machine is just a monster that shoots things. Then it goes to cavalry, then it goes to combat units, and then it goes to ranged units. So the way you classify your units defends how they, affects how they work in game. Your guys, you make all the decisions. You control it like you would a standard war game. But the enemy forces, when you're building them for whatever reason, it will affect how they work. And again, I'll talk through that in a minute. So we'll just run through deployment. The very first thing you do, once you've decided to do your mission and your forces and everything, is you roll 2d6 and you add your strategy rating or your strategy difference. That is the amount of CP your army generates, take away theirs. Scouts add a modifier, so for example we've got wolves, they're our scouting unit, we get +1. They've got wolf riders, so they get +1. So it balances out. But you would end up with a difference, a differential. So we've got 3 command points in a scout unit, so that's 4. 2 command points in a scout unit, that's 3. So we get +1 to our roll. So we'll roll now. Okay, we've got a 6. We add that 1 for our advantage, that becomes a 7. You look on the deployment chart and you'll see that 7 gives you a deployment advantage of 1. It's not great, but what that means is you deploy an enemy unit first before you start alternating. If we'd rolled better or worse, so say we rolled a 2 and ended up with a total of 3, we would have a deployment disadvantage of 4 units. We would have to deploy 4 units before they started deploying any of theirs. The higher you roll for the players, the better you get to gauge what's going on. But what it does is it means it opens up, so if you're facing against, I don't know, a chaos army where there's a lot of leaders, or they've just got a lot of good generals, or a wolf rider clan where there's everything's a scout, you're going to have a disadvantage when deploying your forces to choose where you can line them up. So 5 + 1 gives us a 6, so that is a -1 for our deployment. So we have to deploy 1 unit before they do anything. We'll go with wolves and we'll go on that side. Then we would look at their units and we would deploy one of theirs and alternate back and forward. You do this looking at the unit priority, with 1 being heroes, 2 being monsters and war machines, 3 being cavalry, 4 being combat infantry, and 5 being the rest, with the exception of shooting infantry or shooting units or shooting like archers and things are 0 for this, so they get deployed first. So the first unit we have to deploy for the goblins are the goblin archers. They go in zone 3, so we deploy them smack bang in that column. And then we deploy one of ours, and then we would alternate between. So we'll deploy the rest of their force now just for the purposes of seeing what happens. We deployed the shooting infantry, now we deploy the heroes. So that goes to 6, so right there. Heroes can be attached to units. If that is the case, they get absorbed into that unit and become like unit type. So here we've got a Wolf Rider hero attached to a Wolf Rider unit. He counts as cavalry. Only small heroes can do that. Heroes on monsters count as monsters essentially. So now we've got several monsters and war machines. We always start with the highest point cost, which would be the trolls here. Trolls go into zone 3. There's already a unit there, so we place them next door in that column, but closer to the board centre. Spider Riders go to zone 1. Now all along we would be alternating, so as the deployment unfolds, we could then line up what we want to do against their units. War machine time, number 5 in the centre of that column. Cavalry into 2. Again, busy, busy, so fills out the rest of that column. If a unit was now to be deployed there, because there's basically one rank of army already there, it would go to the next zone closer to the centre. Once there's one big battle line, if you can't deploy a unit, it goes behind in the original zone. And the last unit for goblins goes to zone 6, which puts them there, because they can't go in the centre, so they go closer to the board centre. We'll just pop our forces out now, although we should have been doing this one by one, just to get a view of how you would start the game. Once you're all deployed, you make a command roll. As a player, you're adding the difference in command points between us and them, and on a 7+, we get to go first. We rolled a 4, we've got one more command point, so it becomes a 5, so it doesn't work. They get to go first, which is good, because it means they get to show off the AI system. So, talking about unit priority again, we look at ranged units, and to do that we start in the same priority. So we start with heroes and work our way down. We have a goblin wizard, that counts as a ranged unit. His fireball attack is 9 inches, he's out of range. Then we go to war machines. This chap has an 18-inch range. No, he has a 24-inch range. So we would look to see if he was in range and line of sight on anything. He is. He's of range and line of sight on absolutely everything. So who does he attack? Again, we look at the checklist. So heroes, monsters and war machines, to cavalry, to combat, to shooting. And within that, the tiebreaker is points cost. If a unit is attached, if a hero is attached to a unit, so let's pop this wizard in with these elves and this barbarian in with the ogre, they become invisible. If the barbarian was on his own, he would try and get sniped. But we wouldn't obviously have deployed that, that would be a terrible, terrible decision. So he looks at all the units he can see and he'll choose the one with the highest point cost. So as it's everything, and everything is within its 45-degree arc, he will go for the highest pointed unit, which I believe is the ogres. He would roll to hit, and he would miss. I'll talk about the actual combat engine in a bit. So he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. None of these guys did anything except him. So he's activated. So we can represent that with a marker, or we just know. Then we move on to heroes. So the AI system works on a simple checklist. So it will make a move towards the nearest enemy unit or the nearest objective. Then it would check to see if it could shoot, if it had weapons, and then it would do another move. If it was in charge range, it would charge before that. So this chap's got a 9-inch magic missile. no chance of being anywhere near that, so instead he makes a double move towards the nearest objective. Units will not leave objectives unless there's another unit there to do so. Again, it's a very quick checklist. So we move the hero. This hero counts as cavalry, so he moves with cavalry, and then we move the rest of our heroes, the rest of our monster units. Trolls are stupid, so they only get an action on the 2+, so they only make one movement. Then we go to cavalry. Wolf riders move 8, so they will dash towards the objective. Objectives are held when they're within 1 inch. They're not within 1 inch, they are just outside. Then we look at the combat unit, which will do a single, well, it will march, which is 2. And this missile unit now will walk and do the same of running to move. War machine gets left. That's the first turn of the game. Comes to us. We generate command points. We now activate our units and spend command points as we want to. For the sake of what's occurring, I'm just going to move some stuff closer so we can get some bits and bobs happening. So the end of our phase, we make a strategy roll for the enemy. You look at how many command points their force generates and how many ours has got left. So we started this turn with 3 command points. We've not spent any, so we've still got 3. This force generates 2 command points with no additional for any reason. So we're at +1. So we roll 2d6, adding 1, and look up the strategy chart. It's a 7, which becomes an 8. On a 7+, nothing additional happens. On a 6, any enemy unit that is broken will rally for free, and it can afford other activations and other actions. If you end up with a total of 0 or less, they get a free turn. So you want to be in control of your CP, you want to balance it, but if you start overspending, you will end up with the risk of the enemy forces taking a second turn over that. So we would do another activation here where we would check for missile weapons, check to see if there's any charges, and we would progress through that. Combat engine is a very simple one. Each individual stand has a number of attacks and a number of wounds. So if we take some goblins, each of these stands would have 3 wounds and they would have 3 attacks. Morale is dealt with if a unit takes 2 damage from a single attack, or if it loses a stand, it has to take a number of morale saves equal to those those particulars. So if this unit suffered 2 wounds and ended up stand being removed, it would have to take 2 morale saves with each one, giving it a shaken, and it would degrade therefore. But I'll do the rules in a different one. This was more about the AI element of it. Let me know your thoughts.